Hi, everybody. I'm Vicki Schaefer, counselor for membership for the AGO. And on behalf of National Council and everyone else, we welcome you to this webinar in honor of the Year of the Young Organist. And it's my great privilege today to be able to introduce to you a friend of mine. I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Zielinski in a number of different avenues. He's Director of Choral Activities at the University of Oklahoma. He's also Director of Music at McFarlin Memorial United Methodist Church in Norman, Oklahoma, which is where, and he does a lot of other things that I don't know if he'll go into any of those other things or not, but check out his bio. He's quite an impressive guy. And like I said, a good friend of mine. So he's here today to talk to you about church music planning resources and how to go about doing that if you get thrown into a church job. So Dr. Zielinski, welcome. And thank you so much for being with us and sharing your vast knowledge with all of us. So it's all yours, sir. Take it away.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Schaefer. And I'm glad I can just, share some of the experiences that I've had in church music. And I'll briefly just, my experiences with church music, I think, I'm not sure there is a denomination I haven't worked in, from the Unitarians. I was raised Catholic, but hung out with a lot of Lutherans in Wisconsin, Presbyterian, Disciples of Christ. I'm now at a Methodist church, also cantored for a year when I was in Rochester, New York. And it's always been a part of my life, although usually my main job was to teach at a university. And but I must say, and I'll talk to you about the church planning resources. Church music is something that you can do for your entire life. And it not only helps you, I think, in many ways personally, but also gets you connected with people in the community. And today I'm going to share my screen with you, and because I also want to kind of talk you through what we're going to discuss today. And if you just go to richardzielinski.com and you have a question after the seminar, just please send me an email and I'll help you any way I can. But I'm going to share my screen so we can just kind of see the outline of what we're going to do during this time. And some of this, it might look like there's a lot of additional information here, but I think all this goes into your building a successful church music program. And I'll talk to you about my performance pyramid, which I have developed over the years, and my choral maxims, because most of the time we're going to be working with singers that love to sing and probably need more vocal training every day and every week. But I'll talk about those more specifically. Education and experience. I think we all accumulate and go through a lot of different degree programs, but I think it's what you do beyond the degree requirements that I see the young church musicians, organists, conductors. Those are the ones that I think have been really successful. Take more conducting, be involved in ensembles, not just choir. Go to the, if you're at a school, there's going to be a band, there's going to be an orchestra, an early music group, play, accompany, sing, as much as you can, because once you're out of school, you're kind of on your own in a community, and those experiences will help you. Voice lessons, critical. Take a voice lesson, or at least each semester you should be singing or taking a voice lesson or accompanying voice lessons so you really understand the voice. Now, I think you've already I've talked about this because I've been watching some of the seminars that have been done and are coming up, but always keep your resume, your CV, and recordings and videos, up to date. It's really important. You never know when that job that you've been waiting for or something will happen that they'll need to, they'll get that material. Now, that goes back to number 2. If you want your resume and your CV to speak to a committee to get the church job, you got to get involved in things beyond the degree program. Now, going back to 3B, be flexible, work in a variety of churches, places of worship, and locations. I'm always taken back a little bit when younger, because I'm old now, but when younger church musicians, organists, conductors, and so forth say, I want to teach in this location of the country, this denomination with this many choirs and handbills. And I would say just be flexible. Where there's a job, go for it. You might years later get that dream job of yours, but don't limit yourself by what kind of church that you want to work in. I know they're all connected to our faith, but you might be passing up an opportunity that could change the course of your life. When the doors open, when the door of opportunity opens and it knocks, open the door. Because if I would not have taken this McFarlin Memorial United Methodist Church in Norman, my life would be very different. This last over a dozen years, I've been a part of this church, but I came here to be the music director or director of choral activities at OU. I think the week or month that I came to Norman, the church has said, could you just get us through the summer? Our minister of music has taken another position. I thought, oh yeah, I'd love to, that'd be great. And it's going on 13 years now. And I know people and some of my colleagues will say, oh, I'm not going to take that on. That could be too much. But, when opportunity knocks, man, open the door, because this place has changed the course of my life. Love working at the university. I conduct an orchestra in town, but this church has had a major impact on my life. We're going to talk a lot about recruitment, the campaign, because to build a program and to plan a program, you have to have singers in your choir loft. You want to have bell choirs. You want to have accompanists. You want to have instrumentalists and so forth. And I can walk you through that. And you can see how teaching voice comes up quite a bit because I think we have to work with the experienced and inexperienced singers. And I think that just takes a little, we can discuss that. Service planning and repertoire. I do have some rep I'm going to share with you from music that I feel is healthy for the choir and for the congregation to understand and to, as I say, what will help heighten and reinforce the message of the sermon of the holy day that you're in. Hymns and anthems and so forth we'll talk about. And then you want to retain people. And before you know it, you'll have 30 people in your choir. And I like to really focus on the Sunday service and build my church music planning system around that. And you always try to produce quality, which means you got to pick the right rep and you got to really be prepared for your rehearsals and so forth. Be organized, and then be sincere. I mean, be yourself, be kind, be honest. And when you need to be, and this should probably happen daily, just be guided by prayer. And we'll talk about the Ubi Caritas chant a little bit later. One thing that has helped me quite a bit over the last couple of years is this program called Planning Center. And some of you might already be using it. And so it's something that I think is really important for us to just talk about. If you don't know of this program, there's several that are out there. We use this as a planning center application. And for example, I'm going to go to our All Saints, which was obviously just a couple of weeks ago. And everybody that is in our not only the music ministry area at McFarlin, and McFarlin has 2 children's choirs, a youth choir, an adult choir. I can sometimes break off a smaller group, a Schola group. We have 6 handbell choirs. And so I would say it's a very active music ministry program. But this program, and you'll see a lot of, if you just search Planning Center, and it's set up where everybody who's working on the Sunday service can use this application. And it's so helpful because I think it's just one of these that, we're all crunched for time, and to call meetings sometimes is not as easy as people think when you got to get, 6 or 7 or 10 people together, and everybody can go back in. Plus, this has been really helpful. I've heard from the ministers that they can give you, maybe a month, 2 months. I'm fortunate that the ministers that I've worked with at McFarlin go on retreats about every 3 months, and they do 3 months or 6 months in advance. And sometimes those change, but they are giving us the sermon series, the scriptures and so forth, or the theme, or and that really helps me pick the repertoire. Because I think, this is so helpful for us to be as a team, a music ministry team, that we can fill in all these things And then meet, of course, we meet every week, but it's something that, people come up with great ideas. We can put it in here, talk about it. And it's always live. I mean, this is always like a living document of what we're doing. So keep this in mind, that this is something that your church could invest in, or, because I think it is something that really helps people stay organized. And, going back to the building a successful church music program, I'm going to share with you my performance pyramid. And I use this really in a lot of different settings, not only just the academic, because I've done, and a lot of you will do this in your career. You'll teach at a university or at a school, you'll have a community choir, and you're going to have a church job. Now, the way I've built this performance pyramid, it starts with preparation. So when I'm talking about a lot of these specific tasks that we have to do, it's all before the rehearsal, way in advance. So that planning center is so helpful for this. Practicing is individual practicing, but also just practicing with your ensembles, be it a bell choir, a church choir, it could be another instrumental group. And then we have to personalize this. And the challenge, I made myself an extra note to just talk about this for just a moment. The challenge is when we start to kind of go up, we're going from preparation to practicing to personalizing and publicizing, prioritizing, and polishing the product. I mean, you have to really be disciplined with this, and it's challenging with a church job, because we're turning over anthems and calls to worship and postludes and special music and all that. It's very different than having 1 or 2 concerts a semester that you're working towards. So it's just so important to have these, to just have a plan. And for me, this preparation and practicing, and then how we personalize we have to really personalize what we're singing about. We have to be connected to what the sermon series is about, what the sermon, the individual, what might be a special Sunday for the church or for a special family, for whatever. You have to be connected to that. Projecting the message gets a little harder, that we're all singing still. We're still in masks. You can't see people's faces, but projecting means that your choir looks like they completely understand what they're singing about, and people look engaged if they're performing ensemble-wise, instrumentalists and so forth. I think it is important for us to just be active in publicizing within your church and community what you are doing. Music can be a great recruiter for your church. Prioritizing means you just really need to prioritize time each week before your Wednesday or Thursday night rehearsal, and you have to actually talk about this with your music staff and your music, if they're ringers or singers or other ensembles, that they need to prioritize their week as well. And I'll get into that in a moment, because I think we've discovered a few things that really can help with that. I have just recently, I came up with some more words that I thought would be that we can add to this, but to phonating or voice teaching has to happen every rehearsal when you're working with a choir, and so that's important. That if you've had singing in your background, that's great. If not, then you need to go. You need to study. You need to go and take voice lessons, and before you know it, you'll be teaching your choir to sing things that they never thought they could sing. Another word is passion. I think you have to strive for excellence, because I think I set the bar high for people at our church, and because I just think, we're trying to deliver a musical sermon. I mean, if that's not important enough to just strive for excellence, then I don't know where else we can get our motivation. So prayer, or a plea or reflection with your choir. It's important to pray with your choir. And you notice all these words all start with the letter P. And I mentioned about projecting. That's facial expressions, kind of the language we kind of put forth, especially if you're sitting behind a preacher on the Zoom, or that weekly. I get an email every single week about this. So, that some person behind, the preacher giving the sermon in the choir looked funny or didn't look engaged. So we do talk about projecting like this attitude of we're, just focused on what's going on in the service. I know it's hard, and I have college students in my choir, and now that you have like a computer on your watch, it's tough because they're all looking at that, but you have to really practice this. And then polishing the product, and this has to happen quickly. And I'll show you how we do this throughout a week at McFarlin. And these are all, and I'll be able to, if any of you want, copies of this, I'm more than happy to send you more and more article. I have an article on this whole process that I have put together. But I think it's important that that you understand my process of how we go through like a week at McFarlin. And you can see, as I've been talking about this, that another area are choral maxims. And the choral maxims are just little, they're little phrases, because sometimes when people sing out of tune, it's because they haven't taken a deep breath. Now, if you're a golfer, Maxims is a great book on golf by Harvey Pinnock. So I kind of stole the idea of maxims from a golf book. But we strive for this in every rehearsal. Choirs that breathe together achieve together. Soft singing, is the key to great singing. Two equal notes or two notes of equal value and character should never be performed in the same manner. And you can see, and when we're trying to produce, a beautiful choir that's delivering a message to reinforce or enhance the sermon, this is important that the tone is beautiful, that we're singing music that's in tune. And sometimes, we get people that are pretty loud and they like to hear themselves sing, but I always use the 90-10 kind of rule, that 90% us we think about in sound and 10% me. And then I think that's, you can clearly hear, and these are little things, these are little sayings rather than saying, hey, Zielinski, you're sticking out of the choir, zip it. You can't talk like that to your choir, but you can say, we should be a mix of 90% and 10% me, 90% us. And if you can hear your own voice and your distinct tone quality, you're probably not blending. And people will laugh, but they'll get the message. Only sing as loud as your section can sing beautifully. I think choirs are judged by how wonderful and unified the soprano section is. It puts a lot of pressure on the sopranos, but they've been stars all their life, so they can deal with that. But it is important to let them know how challenging that is. Basses need to crescendo when you descend. Altos, I think, are the key to great choirs and must sing with a full velvety tone. Tenors, they must sing like they're singing Lieder, Schubert or Brahms and so forth. Stretch vowels keeps the vowel formation, as long in a phrase as you can. Look up every 2 or 3 measures so you connect with your audience, and then the end of the phrase is what everybody will hear. So you want to really make sure that you're getting your choir to work on that. So you might be saying, oh, that's a lot. My choir, I only got 12 people, and I've had choirs of 12. Where one guy, I remember his name, Frank Smith. I was going to move him away from the organ. And because I needed, the basses were not near the organ, he said, well, I can't do that, and I'll talk to you about it. Okay. Well, he needed to actually feel the vibe, the organ actually playing for him to then know I'm going to start to sing. So I know I'm at a big church now, and it's a wonderful job, but I have been in some fabulous churches, in country churches and small town churches, that when you can get them, the 9 that, are singing for the 27 in the congregation, and you make some beautiful music and you're reinforcing the message, those are special moments. I mean, they really are. So I don't think it's, if you're at a cathedral or you're at a small church, I think I use the same, I have to be honest with you. I use the same, I hand out the performance period. I talk about, what we just kind of reviewed. So those are things that I think just are to keep in mind. And one thing that helps us, if we jump down to, because I'm not going to talk very much about experiences. The older I get, the less I see young people being involved in a multitude of experiences. Undergraduate, in my view, is the time that you need to be involved, even in your master's students. When you get to do the doctorate, that's quite specific, but stay involved in what's going on around in your community. And once people know that, you'll have more work than you know what to do with. Now, as far as the recruitment campaign, because building a program, you got to have people, in the choir got to have people ringing bells, and probably for the most part of my life, I've spent the majority of it building programs. I think that's just been, I guess, my MO, and that's just what I've been doing. So I've been involved in a lot of rebuilding, and what helps when you're trying to recruit singers and ringers and just people that, because you'll need volunteers too, you have to be organized. One way to show the your potential singers, and you have to set up a date where you're going to have a recruitment day for music at your church. There's going to be people that you can, and these don't all have to be performers. These that are ringing or singing or accompanying or instrumentalists. They can be helped. They're a part of your recruitment team, because they'll tell you who's at your church, who's a good singer, or who's a maybe part-time retired music director. So you have to create a database, an Excel spreadsheet of singers, ringers, accompanists, instrumentalists. I still use the old letter that I sign, or a postcard, or social media, to keep people informed that, hey, we got these activities that are going to happen. Be visible, just not on the days that you're working in your and so forth, because we do a lot of stuff at night. Sometimes we practice and so forth. We're not. Get involved in things at your church and be visible if you're trying to build a program. This music ministry calendar I'll show you in a moment. Paid singers, I'll just say a little bit about that. Most churches will be able to come up with at least a quartet if you want, but it's a tricky situation. You don't want to hire soloists or hire paid singers because you don't believe in you send the message that the choir that's there right now ain't good enough. I have always used it as, I want to get these people in church. And for me, I have a lot of college students that have now gone into music ministry because the church invested in them, being, we call them choral interns. And then you want to teach voice. When people feel that they're learning how to sing better and sight read better and can sing more difficult music, people will, I was going to say flock to your choir, but they will want to sing in your choirs and be a part of your music ministry. I'm only going to show you 2 pages of this, but it's a wall calendar. So you can put it, hand it out to my choir, and they know that our music, this is our December coming up. And so all this is color coded, and with bell choirs and so forth being one color and so forth. I think when I copied this, it must not have copied the color. But you can see that, Wednesday nights are a pretty intense day at McFarlin for the music program. And there's different, bell rehearsals. I told you there were 6 bell choirs there. That we're going to do a Messiah as part of a worship service, and I can talk you through that. That's going to happen, I guess, in 2 weeks. And then, so this is the week coming back from Thanksgiving, and this is a whole calendar. Now, sometimes we have to switch a few dates and things, but people are very appreciative of this. I have heard, because they make a point to say, well, this is great because now we know when, for example, NPS is Norman, Oklahoma Public Schools. That's important for us to know that is when everybody's going to start going on Christmas break, and we still have Christmas at the end of the year. But you can see our weekly rehearsals. We have a handbell choir concert here. We have the same day during the church services. We bring in the Norman Philharmonic Orchestra, and we do portions of part 1 within, and our minister preaches in between the different groupings and vignettes in Messiah. Then we have a big candlelight carol, which has been going on for like 56 years. And then we have our 3 Christmas Eve concerts. It's always good to take a break. This will be an interesting, because Sunday is like the day after Christmas, right? On the 25th, so that on the 26th. And then we start back up in January. This is April. This is Holy Week. So you can see we've already given this out to everybody. And, these are, I go through very specifically each month and say, okay, got to get ready for the 10th through the 17th. Now I do give, there's a lot of things that happen after Easter that I don't have to get that direct as far as, please put this on your calendar. This is a good year for us because, on the calendar, I think spring break for a lot of us around this area, it's like the 17th of March and somewhere around there, which is great because it gives us a couple of weeks. But this is April. of this year. When you hand this to somebody in a church, in a choir or bell choir, they appreciate the organization and they know you mean business and that you're planning ahead, and that goes into the whole preparation aspect of my performance pyramid. I have these. If you want me to send you one of these, PDF of this for the whole year, I'll be more than happy to do that. It also, this way we plan the entire year through Pentecost, and then we have a summer choir that sings throughout the summer. And it just helps, I think, everybody as far as our communications department and the ministers, if they have a special, Sunday, or they have a visiting preacher, then you know about it well in advance, rather than going, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And then it's easier for me to pick repertoire. And that's something I'll get into in a moment here. So I think the calendar is critical. And this, see, I'm setting up an expectation. I hand this out even when I first came here. I did not know that choir. I had never been in the church. I looked inside the church when I think my wife and I were looking for housing here, and then I thought, wow, what a beautiful facility. And then when I came, it was a Tuesday. We moved here on Tuesday. I did a Wednesday night rehearsal, and I was up leading the choir, and it's kind of a funny story, but that next Sunday. And the last job that I had was at a private Baptist college. So that's how I conducted a hymn. I thought, okay, I'm going, and I got up there and just ripped it. We're singing up, and I'm not sure that the Methodists in Norman, Oklahoma were kind of expecting, this Polish Catholic guy that I grew up being Polish or Catholic, and I'm Polish, of course. But I jumped in, and then by the time we got to like our second, third rehearsal, and I realized, this might be something I'm going to do in the fall. They were asking me if I would stay. Then I produced the calendar. Then it was business. Let's get the whole year planned. And that, it's you get a little pushback here and there because they might not have ever done a calendar before. But then you just say, stay focused on what the church needs to produce great music, and as I mentioned, focus on the Sunday service, the word, the message, and the sermon. So the calendar is critical. Developing a recruitment team, and you'll know who those people are, and then create the database, so you can just be either set up a constant contact list or just use an Excel spreadsheet and send emails. You can now set up Facebook pages where you can message everybody. Not everybody's going to have those. Still, some people don't have email in my choir, so we make sure we mail to them or send a phone call to them. As I mentioned, be visible, get involved in other activities in the church. If they're fundraisers, if they need music for United Methodist Women's Group or anything like that, just make your music program available. I talked about the calendar, and I've also spoken just briefly about the paid singers. And I think you understand, I think it's something, if you can bring those singers in, it's not tricky, but you just have to be aware that you want to, really audition not only the person's voice and reading capabilities, but also their commitment to church music. And, if they're just doing it because they need some extra money and all that, we get that. But I think, they need to know that it's not, they have to be a part of your vision and the church's vision of music for your church. And the service planning, and I brought that up earlier. It's, I think, having this document, or having this program, having this program is so helpful, because your music program will grow I should just say, I have always been one that, okay, this is All Saints Day. So it was a church service that, of course, everything we talked about, from the hymns, to our anthem, to the children's choir's piece of music and so forth. And it also ended up being our stewardship Sunday. So it was all the bells and whistles were going off this service, trying to get people to hand in their pledge cards, plus, be involved in, what this day was about. And our church does something that's it's one of my favorite Sundays, because they do, maybe 3 by 2 feet banners of people who have passed away, so you look at the church and there are hundreds of them around the church, and there are people from our choir, right? It's gonna be people that, you're really close to, or that you knew, or that you, and so that Sunday is really something at McFarlin. All these people, and this might be due to COVID. We've never had 42 people that we had to say their name because they died during the year. And then you can see the music for this all was either reflective when they were announcing the names. We had a beautiful clarinet soloist, and she's an engineer. Okay, she's not from the university. Beautiful meditation, and she's a wonderful player. But you can see all the hymns and everything that we sang was really focused on All Saints. And I know this is a simple one because this is one you can pick, but these are your high holy days that you're going to get more people at church probably. And it's also when they see it on the calendar, because it will change maybe by a week or so, or when it falls in the calendar. But when I'm talking about, if I go back to my outline here, when I say, when I'm talking about what will help heighten and reinforce the message of the sermon of that holy, or of the holy day, or of that just said Sunday, I think you have to really, this is probably the most serious topic, besides just, being so organized every week, is the repertoire that you pick. And this goes back actually to education and experience. I've taught at schools that, I didn't see everybody, because now the degree programs have changed in some schools, and there are people that are in church music that don't sing in any of the choirs at our school. Well, that's a whole year of repertoire that someone might be able to use at a time. Plus, you're going to get voice lessons every time you go into a choir rehearsal. You're going to learn more languages. Once you miss it, it's gone. And I'm seeing more and more people. In fact, I had a discussion last week about this. It was one of the hallway discussions. Met a person, had never seen the person in any of the choirs or any other activities that I'm involved in. And we have lots of different activities. And I think undergraduates and your graduate program, doctorate, PhDs, maybe a little bit different, but get involved. Okay, early music, church. You can play the continuo, you can play the harpsichord, you can sing in the choir, but just get involved. I know I've brought this up quite a bit, but I want people to go out and be successful. And if you don't have the repertoire, the vocal knowledge, the training to play in all these different styles that I think, church programs need, then it gets tough. Then it can be frustrating because you don't have because you got to be able to, we call them blizzard anthems. Sometimes you got to have a few of those blizzard anthems, in your back pocket when there's a snowstorm, and you still got to produce church that day, or the next day. And so knowing more rep, and why don't we move to repertoire? Because I think you'll see that, and I don't know if this is, I've kind of taken my repertoire that I've done for my entire life, and McFarlin does have an extensive program, bell choir music and church choir music. Folks like John Yarrington and Perry White, and I think there's only Don McAvoy and myself. That's over the last probably 50 plus years. We've had 4 directors of music here at our church. Now, this is when I'm talking about repertoire, I'm talking about how you build your church choral program, or your church program through, selecting that anthem or the choral music that they can do well. I remember getting this With a Voice of Singing, Martin Shaw. If you haven't done it, it's an old, warhorse, and it's something that just is wonderful to sing. Starts with unison, with a voice of singing, has a great message, declare this and let it be heard, hallelujah. He's also written some other things, but this is a standard rep. And if I was to define how I approach music, I am rooted in a lot of the Midwest choral traditions that I grew up in. So I use some of that music. And then I also think it's really important that you work with composers who are living right now, and you bring in that kind of diversity. But you're going to hear these names, and I can also give you this handout at the end. But Martin Shaw, Alice Parker and the whole Shaw-Parker arrangement, Sing to the Lord. You can see these, usually these start out unison, then they'll break into parts, or they'll do some kind of a canon or a And I think you'll see that sometimes it won't break into 4 parts. And I've never had a congregation or anybody from the congregation when we sing a beautiful unison piece or a 2-part piece said, yeah, couldn't worship, it wasn't 4-part. They want to hear beautiful music that they can understand the text and sing to the Lord, the heavenly hosts, and thou earth adore. So they're going to be able, and then maybe after you do a series of these pieces that are 2-part, 3-part, so forth, unison, as I mentioned, canon, writing with little fuguettes and stuff, it'll work. Precious Lord, Take My Hand, it's a great Ringwald. If you don't know Ringwald, he worked for Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians, and this is a version of it. I would say it's a beautiful hymn, but this is a special arrangement because he's taken the words of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, but puts it into the text. It's gorgeous. Now these are Eugene Butler, great piece. Again, you can see it starts out unison, then breaks into parts. Let all mortal flesh keep silent. Walter Peltz. These are things that I sang in my high school choir, sang in my church choir growing up in Wisconsin. But again, this has brass. And sometimes you can, maybe the choir and the congregation is only coming in unison for the first verse, but there's probably going to be a brass quintet in your community that you can, for a high holy day. And Peltz, if you don't know that music, these all are composers that you should look up because they have a ton of choral music that you can use. Rudder, this has been our special song for our Candlelight Carol, which is going 50 some years. I think Rudder, he can write in any style. And he can write music that is so difficult that only a handful of choirs in the United States could sing. So I think he's sometimes misrepresented that he does a lot of easy music stuff, but it's gorgeous. And about repertoire, I just want to make a point here. Is it going to help your choir build better vocal production? With better vocal production, you're going to be able to deliver the message in the music that should be connected to the message of that Sunday. So I'm always looking, and you can usually tell if some composer, like we just mentioned all these composers up to this point, they write great for the voice. It's always great voice leading and so forth. I had a gentleman that has Parkinson's disease right now, and he had to drop out of the choir, and he caught me at the end of church last week, and he said, "Do you think you could do the Lord of the Dance?" Basically was saying before I die, because I loved singing that. So boom, I looked it up. I said, yeah, it's a great piece. It's a shaker tune. And I think it'd be, and he was a wonderful, wonderful person. So sometimes someone wants to hear a special song and it fits into the church calendar for with your group, and your group can sing it. And those are little special moments for those people. 2 versions of this, if you don't know Stainer and Daniel Moe. This is the traditional one, God So Loved the World. Obviously, this is when we sing around Easter. And then Daniel Moe, who was, he was known when I was in the 70s, when I was going to school. He was known, and he was at University of Iowa, and went to Oberlin and so forth. He was the dean of choral music. That he wasn't really like a dean, but everybody called him the dean of choral music. Dan Moe, unbelievable writing. It's a really special version that he wrote for his son, actually. And that same text, just different. I think if you don't know Dan Forrest, he's kind of very popular right now and writes beautifully for the voice. And this is a beautiful arrangement of cello and voice and choir. And some of these are going to have like an SSA version, a TTB version, or SAB or SATB. So be aware of that. And now you can there's so much of this music that you can get online, and you pay for so many copies and so forth. I've always loved doing Levitt's music, John Levitt's music. Again, I always feel it writes so well for the voice, getting pitches, repetitive motives, not extending the range to the point. This is a wonderful piece, actually written, for Eve Ely. And if you haven't done any of Levitt's works, he's quite good. And this is a little bit different, but this Creating Me a Clean Heart by Levitt. Again, you can see that it's also available SSA. So, and I don't think we see probably enough TTBB or SSAA, women's and men's, or soprano alto choir, tenor bass choir in And I need to do more of that myself, to just break up the choir and give like the tenors and basses a week off and just do some music for soprano and alto choir. But love it again. This is a little bit different than the festival Sanctus, much more reflective. Now, I got a bunch of music. We have a lot of music by Mark Patterson as well. I think he had made trips to McFarlin, I think during the John Yerington era. A lot of this is really good music for choirs that are just getting kind of revved up, or if you have a very limited time of rehearsal, but it's wonderful text. I think you all from John 14. And a composer that I got to know kind of through a singer that I knew quite, was a good friend of mine when I was down in Florida. If you don't know Craig Courtney's music, he's at a big Presbyterian church, I think, in Columbus, Ohio. Wonderful writer. This Be Not Afraid is just really special. And then if you search with all your heart, and the reason I'm taking a little bit extra time on repertoire, you can do all the planning and have everything lined up, but you got to really make sure that the repertoire is the right rep for that Sunday or that sermon series or that holy day. And then you start making this really intense connection that I'll talk about a little bit later. But I hadn't been really, I had taken some years off from church music, and McFarlin's a big church, and to sit in front of that congregation every Sunday and see the power of our hymn singing, and this has nothing to do with me, by the way. It just has to do that this church really is like, music is important, and it keeps everybody focused on the message of that sermon series. And then we'll use a piece like, Hal Hobson, The Gift of Love, easy piece. Yeah, you're all going to have a service during the day. If you don't know Royal Dilworth, wonderful music. And these are all pieces that I have done at McFarlin at one point or time in the last 13 years. We also do Messiahs. We also do big things on other holy days that I'll talk about in a second. Witness, that's a different version. There can be an accompanied one. There's also an a cappella one. Create in Me, Alan Pote, if you don't know that music, great church music composer. Now, we could spend a whole thing on Mac Wilberg, because I do a lot of his music as well. This Little Light of Mine, we've used this year, especially doing videos. We did this as a virtual anthem. And then Saints Bound for Heaven is one we did just past a couple weeks ago. But you have to have two wonderful keyboardists like Dr. Schaefer. She was one, I think we did that one maybe when we were here. But I think, he always sets you up for success, and Mac Wilberg does it. That sets up the choir and everybody for success. If you don't know Rosephine Powell, wonderful composer, performer, clinician. We had her here to do the Cry of Jeremiah. It's about a 20-minute 4-movement work. And it really mixes styles. When you're singing it, sometimes you're thinking, wow, that sounds a little bit like Mendelssohn. And then she'll go into the last piece like this one, Hallelujah, is written in a gospel style. Marching to Zion, John Ferguson, another, wonderful church musician, teacher, organist, composer. And this also can be done with brass. And then he never failed me yet. Robert Ray wrote this gospel mass. And this is one of the pieces that's kind of followed me around and throughout my career. So I'm going to go back to, so that's a lot of repertoire, but I think the overall message about rep is that you got to know a lot of it. And the way to know that is to go to your conferences, call people, or write people like me and say, hey, because we do this all the time, with people that are some of my colleagues who are in other cities and so forth. We'll talk to each other, say, hey, what's the rep? And then I can show them what we're doing, by having them go to the planning center, our planning center. I can have the visitors go in there and look at that. And then we just start throwing ideas around, and you'll find more rep. You'll find maybe more activities that those churches are doing to recruit. I'm not sure if I believe that the church choir is, like dying or anything like that, but it's, people are so busy right now with, soccer games and these activities and those activities. And, it's something that you have to be aware of. So if they know they're going to be involved in an organized music ministry area, they'll want to, join. I mean, I found that throughout my career. Now, if you would never do this, but you always have to be prepared. You'd have the music, and this is where the volunteers and the recruitment teams and to have their folder, when they pick up the folder every week, they know they came in early, and we all put the music in there in order for doing descants or this and that. With some of the special high holy days, you're always going to have trumpet players and brass players, as I mentioned, or a community band in your community. Lots of arrangements for that. Craig Phillips, we were master students many years ago, another fabulous composer. I should have put a couple of his pieces in there. There sometimes can be challenging, but he's written some just wonderful music for a variety of holy days. And they're wonderful for the voice. He totally gets the voice. So that's a lot of information so far. So maybe I need to take a breath here. And that's why I think number 4 and 5 are so important, that when you're trying to build a program, have a vision of what kind of program you want. By Christmas time, maybe you're going to start a job, in the fall. Then plan the year and set the standards so they know, that this is where you want the program to be. Now, it's just a little sidebar on that whole issue. I've been at churches where, maybe music wasn't as prominent as, say, what I'm doing right now at McFarlin. And that's then you really got to produce the music, and you really have to work with the clergy and with your ministers and your whole faith team, for the service, because you do want to pull this together. I've been at churches, that I really wasn't, things were changing, and I was getting, different scriptures on Tuesday night and that was for the Sunday service, and that happens, and we've all been there. And then sometimes you have to, and I bring this up because really, if you program using your calendar, where you list all your repertoire as you go through, at least 2 months or so, maybe some, I already, and I know most of you probably do this, but know what you're doing at Easter, at least have an idea. Or for us, we start our Christmas music, before All Saints, just one of those pieces or 2 of those pieces. And so they kind of know that's going to be happening, in a month or 2. And you also have to, there's things that you have to do with your choir besides rehearsing. Sometimes there's fundraising activities that you have to do. We sell pumpkins. This is like major, I didn't set any of this up. This was something that I inherited, and it's like a total tradition for the city, for McFarlin to sell pumpkins on Halloween, before Halloween. And we raise a lot of money. We also park cars because we have a football team here in Norman, Oklahoma, and our church is 2 blocks from the school. So we sell each of those parking spots for $20. Well, the youth choir does. The youth choir has got more money than they know what to do with. So I know I've heard from my friends and colleagues in church, and they say, we don't have any money. Well, then you got to go out, you got to find ways to raise money. Yeah, and I know you probably weren't thinking, as you were in your conducting class or organ studies or keyboard improvisational classes, you were thinking that you were going to have to either sell pumpkins or park cars at football games to raise money so your choir can go on a tour in the summer. I think that happens. I think that if you can find activities, sometimes we do dinner theaters as well, where we're and people will rally, and then they see you outside of the church service, that and then you get to know these people. Then some of them might, oh yeah, I used to sing, and then come on in and sing. Or I used to, I still play the piano, and you need okay. Then you find out you have trumpet players here, and trombone player in that family, and 2 former church musicians, that you never would have guessed until you kind of got out of, because we're always working on Sundays, right? We're always up, in the church service. So I do try to find activities, and a lot of these were built into my job at McFarlin, but go sell pumpkins and these types of activities, and they can be selling wreaths at Christmas, or go caroling at Christmas, and And but it brings, you start to build teams, and you get to talk to people outside of a rehearsal, because Wednesday nights or Thursday nights, we're all about music. We're all about trying to get the next Sunday or the next high holy day ready, and we're all kind of getting into it, right now. And I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving and get some rest before Advent starts on a week from today. But I think the planning of this, dream big. I mean, and you'll go to church, you will get church jobs there where music isn't a part of what they kind of have experienced maybe for 10, 20 years. But then when you bring in the music and you're heightening that worship time for them in the throughout the Saturday, or it could be or Sunday, and it could be a special Ash Wednesday, then you'll start seeing the connections, and picking the right hymns too. We sang can't remember what the hymn was today, because today was Youth Sunday, so I actually got to watch church because the youth took over the entire church, and I think I handed out bulletins today, which is kind of nice. To watch the youth take over a service, it was really impressive. But one of the hymns was really kind of hard to figure out where we were going. It was first verse, second verse, repeat this, go to the coda. And I thought, sometimes those wonderful hymns, that we've all grown up singing, sometimes people just need to hear those hymns. We always like to start the church service with something that people can kind of get involved in the church service. So seldom do we start with something slow. Middle hymn is usually something that's a little bit more reflective. And the third hymn is, if I hear them whistling it or singing it out in their car, getting to their car in the parking lot, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to carry that with them. And if it has, trust in Jesus, or if, there's tons of hymns that we can all talk about. And we take a lot of time to talk about that. And I know that's something that you might find churches where you're at that'll be new to them. It might be new to them to even think about having paid singers in your choir. Start with a quartet. You can do music like Sansaw's Christmas Oratorio, where you're going to probably need to hire 3 or 4 soloists. Maybe someone, and what I have found is that people are willing to kind of step up, because they might need a stipend, every 2 weeks. And some people say, "Oh, that'd be great." Now, I, as I mentioned, it's just, there's a fine line you have to walk there, that you're not getting paid singers in there because you don't believe in the people that are at church right currently in your choir. And because I feel that we have so many of the singers that we have, or some of the interns that I've had at McFarlin, have really been are now have full-time church jobs, and that's been really a ministry that I've really enjoyed watching grow. I mean, and so and probably I'm of that same experience, throughout my life. I was always singing in a lot of different churches in Wisconsin, and a lot of Methodist churches with my high school choir director. And, so I watched and heard a lot of traditional anthems and hymn singing, and I think people need that. I think people miss that. And good, we all know getting back to church has not been easy. Our congregation doesn't have to wear a mask now, but the choir is still wearing masks. I still wear a mask, but we still, we're starting to get more people to come back to church. I think and our music is so important to make people feel like they belong. It brings community to your church. And it's, we've all been away from each other for so long because of COVID. I think this is a good time to start new things. And I think people are just really wanting, and they're hungry to get involved, and they want to be with, they spent enough time at home, by themselves, or with, whatever the situation was. And I've been surprised, even in the academic setting and in my choirs here at McFarlin. I thought, I can't believe how many people are coming out to sing in this choir per week. And we just missed it, and I have to say, we did keep in touch through Zoom every week. And I produced a ton of videos over COVID, which is going to help me now, even with more recruitment. As I mentioned in the recruitment campaign, do videos, do the Instagram, do the Facebook page posts, and communicate with those folks. I thought I have to wrap this up, I think, in a little while. But I do want to just go to show you what we have at McFarlin. Um, where did I put that one? And this is just because I've talked about basic, I've talked about kind of the standard, because we all have the high holy days, the World Communion and All Saints, and now we're getting into Advent, of course, and then when we get to Easter and Holy Week, and this is where I think you can also, it'll help recruit singers. That if you're going to do, this is a Good Friday service, and we've either done, I did the St. John, portions of the St. John Passion, and so we have this stage that the musicians are sitting on, that actually is coming out all the way over a kneeler, and it tells obviously the story of there's the seven. This was this one I think was the seven last words of. No, this was the St. John Passion. But you also can use Dubois' seven last words. Now, I'm not saying that you do the whole thing as a performance in the time of that service. What we do is we sing a few movements, and then our minister would do, they're called reflections. They're probably 4-5 minute reflections between the movements, and the seven last words, of course, lends itself to each word, or you can do 2 words and the minister can preach on that. And this is a beautiful Nowak organ, Fritz Nowak, and so it's I'm fortunate because we live, but a lot of you probably are in university towns, and I have to tell you that, because my wife and I were just talking about this morning, that I didn't come to Norman, as I mentioned, to work at this church. But it's obvious for me, it's been just an unbelievable experience. Plus, it introduced me to so many people in the community. So I was up leading, the hymns throughout and trying to recruit. And I don't think I would have met, hardly, university, wonderful place to work and everything, but it doesn't, they're not always totally connected to the community like a church. And this was, out of this came, because I was working at McFarlin, several people approached me about, why don't we have an orchestra in this town? I said, well, let's build one. So we started the Norman Philharmonic, and we're celebrating our 11th year now. And it's kind of the house orchestra for McFarlin, although we do concerts other places. So you never know when you get an opportunity, or somebody says, hey, could you accompany this musical? Or, I'm doing a Bach cantata. You want to play continuo? Or you might think, oh man, it's busy. But I don't know. I think, you got to take the experiences when they're kind of put in front of you, and the opportunities, because you never know what's going to happen. And I would never have thought, when I came here, I thought it was the OU, the University of Oklahoma job, that I was really going to, that was it. And I love that job, and it's been a great run there. But it's been McFarlin, week in, week out, reading scripture, praying, singing, trying to heighten the message. That's been quite an experience for me, and we try to engage people in that experience, each Sunday through our music. And so if there's if you if I as I mentioned, if you want to ask me any other questions, or if you want to if you have repertoire suggestions, and if you ask me that, I'll ask you for 5 of your greatest pieces too that you do. And we can keep sharing all of our ideas. I love the idea of this, the AGO, the Year of the Young Organist. I think it's brilliant, and I want to, anything that I possibly can do, I will do to help. Just went through an organ search at McFarlin, and so I got to look at a lot of different resumes and a lot of different people's experiences and so forth. And again, I think it's just always stay active in what you're in your community, not only the church community, but the surrounding community. And when you're trying to build that program, which you will, just, get your database. And, once you get a person's name and an email or a cell number, or you get to go out and have coffee with them, they'll probably end up in your choir, or they might end up in your church orchestra, or ringing bells with you, or, maybe they're going to be your substitute organist. But I'm really so thankful that I had the opportunity to talk to you today about this. Please use me as a resource if you wish. You just go to richardzielinski.com and you can send me an email through there. I'd be more than happy to help.
Well, thank you. As I said at the beginning, Dr. Zielinski is a good friend, and it was such a pleasure to get to work with him. And as you can hear, he's also a great teacher. Young or old, we can always learn. So please reach out to him. He means what he says. He's sincere and a great teacher. So thank you all for joining us. Please get in touch with him and to ask for ideas or to learn anything, because he's a wonderful resource for us. And thank you all for joining us. Keep up the good work, folks. And on behalf of Jillian Gardner, our convener for Agoyo, and all of National Council, thank you so much for being part of this. And Dr. Zielinski, thank you, sir.
My
It was
pleasure.
wonderful. Thank
Thanks
you all.
for the opportunity. Take care. Be
Thank you.
safe. Happy Thanksgiving.